Welcome to the Unveiled. We're talking Devy, tight ends with Andrew Cooper, at Koopa Fiasco on Twitter, the tight end guru. And we have exceeded the length of time I was on with no hills. so I'm sorry about that, but somebody really likes talking tight ends, and I found the guy who may push the 3 hour mark. Okay. Um,
We weren't gonna walk away without talking about Stone Smart, were we?
right, that's
And
true.
Elijah
Uh,
Mitchell. So,
Now, in redraft leagues, I have always taken tight end with my last pick. In whatever league you're in, take Stone Smart with your last pick. All right, so we're gonna talk. We're here to talk Devy. We're here to talk Devy guys. We're here to talk Devy tight ends, and there's not a lot that we're gonna get into. But I do have three things to talk about. The first one, uh, we're talking about Jatavian Sanders. He was tight end at Texas last season, and he's now in our 2024 rookie drafts. Hopefully, if you had him in Devy and in C2C, he's going to make that transition for you. And he's very athletic, so you should be in a pretty good space with that. The guy I want to talk about, though, I've written him up over on the Undroppables, my Unveiled column, and his name is Amari Kneeblack, and he was the tight end for Alabama last season, and he had almost exactly half the number of targets that Jatavion Sanders had, and Alabama threw the ball to their tight ends about half the time that Texas did. I want to say that Amari Kneeblack is a buy in your drafts. He's a trade target because it's not him that caused him to have half as many targets. It was the system. And now he's transferred to Texas, and he's going to inherit the role that Jatavion Sanders had. Tell me about Amari Kneeblack. What's your experience with, like, your knowledge? If I'm in a Devy league, if I'm going into a startup draft or a supplemental draft, or if I'm looking for trade targets at the tight end position, where do you stand on Amari Kneeblack? And also, what's he going to do in 2025 when he comes out as a draft prospect?
right, and again, you have to factor this in with tight end because they're the landscape's kinda changing in college for certain positions where I think players are realizing that some schools specialize and some programs specialize in what they do and can help them get to the NFL. Like, if I was a tight end, I wouldn't go to Alabama. Looking at the success rate for, like, Irv Smith and some of these guys and Cameron Latu, whatever, like, that's the school you go to when you're a wide receiver. They have more wide receivers transfer to that school and transfer out of that school and then become NFL caliber wide receivers than like any other school. You know what I mean? Like these guys like Jermaine Burton, right? That's going to get drafted. That didn't, he did. It's like across the board, that's a wide receiver school. So I wouldn't go there. And we've seen team players have success transferring out of these programs that don't work for wide receivers and going to other ones. I'll give you an example like Jelani Woods. Jelani
Mm-hmm.
Woods went to Oklahoma State and they just didn't use the tight end this way. So he transferred to another school, right? Got Virginia, I believe, got actual tight end targets, and then got drafted. Right. So you see this all the time. You mentioned one earlier that escapes me now, but like you want to showcase your skill. Like you play it out, and then you transfer one last year to showcase your skill, and that's what he's doing here. So I can't predict what's going to happen here, but I can guarantee you that he's going to have a bigger opportunity given the setup, of exactly how it's all panned out. And when you convince that player to come with all the options he had available to him as an Alabama player, everybody wants the cast offs from Alabama, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to have a great opportunity, and we'll have to see how it pans out. But again, it's difficult to predict. But if he shows out at Texas, we move him right up, and I think that him making that decision is big. And again, you look around, and I'm personally just given how players have realized this, I'm much more willing to draft players that go to Iowa or go to Notre Dame, like tight ends especially, that go to Notre Dame, that go to Florida, right? Georgia, obviously, right? That like they sell these guys and say we're the tight end school, and you go here, you go to the NFL, and Iowa points at Noah Fant, T.J. Hawkinson, and George Kittle, and Dallas Clark, and Sam Laporta, and says that's you. That's going to be you. It's going to be Eric all this year, and then next year it's going to be you. So I do weigh school like that to some degree in the modern college football.
So I was literally looking at my show notes and skipped over the question that I was going to ask you
Oh
about
boy.
is the tight end landscape is in the NFL is changing, is also the
Oh yeah, yeah,
landscape in college football changing along with it to kind of like catch up to it.
yeah.
I have a guy, and he was a redshirt junior last season, 6'6", 253 pounds, got hurt. Iowa tight end Luke Lachey. He's going to have a retribution year. He's going to come out this year and be the Iowa guy. Finally, what do you know about him?
I mean, so for me personally, and again, I mentioned this to you that like because of what I do, I focus so heavily on NFL football that I, in retrospect, go back and watch the prospects and do my tape and everything. So I'm not as plugged in, and I do reach out to people within the community. I love checking out the rankings that you guys have on droppables. I look at guys like Austin at Campus to Can, Devy
Mm-hmm.
D, like, and a lot of these guys have Luke Lachey as their number one tight end, right? Because he's highly touted coming out of college. And again, when you get that spot at Iowa, it forces a lot of people to go to other schools. So that does speak. If you get to be the tight end at Iowa and they stick with you, then that means a lot, right? And Eric All's on his way out. So Luke Lachey does get to sit in the driver's seat. But again, what we see from him this year and the production this year is what's going to determine what happens for Dynasty. For Devy, you take that stab, though. For Devy, you take that stab because you know the scheme has not changed. The system has not changed. The reasons that he went to Iowa have not changed. And
Right.
the opportunity is not going to change. So in Devy, I honestly have no problem, even though he hasn't done much on paper because of the injury and everything, and we don't really have much to point to besides high school and scouting and all that. You have to give him the benefit of doubt in a Devy league, or like especially campus to Canton where the college points count. Like, you have to give that guy the benefit of the doubt. Me personally, because I'm such an NFL skewed guy and a metrics guy, I have a hard time just believing in something that we haven't seen, and I can't put it in my spreadsheet.
Right. Well, there is a kind of a tenet out there in the fantasy space. Don't be a helmet scout just because a guy went to a school doesn't mean he's going to blah blah blah.
Right.
And I think to a certain extent that's a good practice to stay away from, unless you're talking about like wrestlers or
Right. Of
track
course.
athletes,
Yeah. Hockey
quarterbacks. I'm
hockey
not going to
guys.
do that.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Hockey
the thing is,
guys,
again, it's just one it's one of many points, right? It's to me,
right,
it's like to me, it goes into what, like, prestige, right? Prestige, there's a whole grouping of things that go into a player's prestige, which is like, where did he go to high school? Did he go to like a big Texas high school? Who's is his dad is his dad Marvin Harrison, right? Like,
right.
did he go to private school? Like, those type things. And again, is he the top recruited wide receiver to Alabama? Is he the top recruited tight end to Iowa?
Right.
That matters for prestige, but there's so many prestigious players that don't pan out. Like, otherwise, Noel Devine would have been, the king of the world. But when
And
he
I was
didn't
going
make
to
it.
say that kind of speaks to the competition level. Uh, you can be a huge star at a tiny little high school that doesn't really play against anybody, and then you go in and you get lost in Division I football.
Right.
Normally, helmet scouting doesn't do a whole lot, but when you're talking about Ohio State wide receivers who are 4 and 5 star recruits out of high school that were handpicked by Brian Hartline, or if you're an Alabama recruit, especially this year or
Mhm.
in previous years, being picked by Brian Sabian. Good Lord, my brain, by Nick Saban,
Right.
or an Iowa tight end. There
It
is an
matters.
element where that's a plus
Right.
in the
No
analysis.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. So finally, just to wrap this up and get some lunch. You said that you had about 4 or 5 names in Devy as targets
Yeah.
that are kind of like on your radar. Let's go over those.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, again, I talked about this on the other show, but I'll rehash it real quick. Is that we're looking for guys that have extraordinary skills both on film and on paper. We want guys that are incredible athletes, multi-sport athletes, converted QBs, converted wide receivers. We want speed first and foremost. We also want to look at where they're lining up. We want guys that a team looks at this player and says, "This guy is so good that we're just going to play him at wide receiver." Brock Bowers was just lining up at wide receiver because he's a better pass catcher than the wide receivers on the team. We don't want the inline blocking tight end. We want the guy that they say we're going to line this guy up at wide receiver, and he's going to run routes, and that's going to be his deal. So I look around and a guy, and again, we talked about prestige, a guy like Aronde Gadsden too, like
Hmm.
the son of Aronde Gadsden, who played
Right.
for the Dolphins. He goes to Syracuse and is kind of like a hybrid wide receiver tight end. Has 975 yards and 6 touchdowns. He played 649 snaps at wide receiver and 82 in line in 2022. He got hurt last year. A guy like that, if he's going to be a big wide receiver that is a tight end eligible in fantasy, those are the guys I want, right? I look at like Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson, and again, I think you guys like him. Last I checked, I always pop around and see what you guys think. But I know in the Devy rankings over there, you guys like Deuce Robinson. We're talking about 6'5", 224 guy that's so athletic that he played wide receiver and he was drafted by the Dodgers. And I guess that's a concern in Devy that he ends up playing baseball instead.
Right.
But if he doesn't play baseball, we're talking about a freak athlete, right? So, I look at guys like him. Obviously, you mentioned Luke Lachey, and I'll to throw a quick shout out to another Luke. You guys got a Luke over there in Arkansas, don't you? Luke Haas, right? Is that
Yeah.
not so? Hearing good things about him. Again, I don't know. I get, I start looking at him when they're guaranteed to come to the NFL. So I'm looking at Gadsden. I'm looking at Deuce Robinson. Uh, for another converted wide receiver, there's a guy Ulrich Boardingham from Florida.
That's a great name. That's a 101 name.
Yeah, Boardingham, baby, let's go,
All
dude.
sporting.
Boardingham be a great hockey name, right, dude? Just
Yeah.
2 minutes for Boardingham. It is a big Boardingham, but six
That's
five
good.
two 6'5", 220 converted wide receiver. So we're talking 6'5", 220. We're talking Kyle Pittstown. You know what I mean? Like, if he can bulk up, that's the type of guy that will translate. I got
Yeah.
to mention Colston Loveland, Michigan. I think 649 yards, 4 touchdowns. He can line up. Whenever I hear the name Colston Loveland, I don't know why. Immediately, the picture that comes into my head is the giant robot spider from Wild Wild West. I think
Weird.
because the guy, I think the bad guy's name was like Loveless or something like that, and I hear I hear Colston Loveland, and I picture that guy Loveless and that spider. I don't know what it is, but I'm rooting for
Okay.
him. Great football name, Colston Loveland. And then the last guy I want to mention is Mason Taylor at LSU. And
Hmm.
again, these are the guys when I watch him, right? We're looking for guys that find the end zone, guys that make one-handed catches, make contested catches, make guys miss. Sam Laporta had like 23 broken tackles in his senior year. Guys that can find creases when there's nowhere to go, that get the first down. And to speak to the opposite, go watch a guy like Luke Schoonmaker and all of his highlights. He had like one really good catch uh, against like Iowa or Illinois, but it's mostly just play action and screens and wide open plays, and he's not really creating for himself, and he's not really breaking tackles. Those guys to me don't translate as well at the next level. So, yeah, that's kind of the group. Again, from somebody that doesn't play a ton of Devy, I do like, and people, a lot of these guys come across my desk because people will message me. They'll email me or on the Discord or in Twitter. So folks out there that play a lot of Devy, message me and say, "What do you
Of
think about this
course.
guy?" Yeah, message me if you got a guy. Say, "Hey, I think this is a guy," or "This is a guy that I want to know your thoughts," because I'll go and watch him and check him out and check his metrics out, and I'll let you know his thoughts because I'm always looking for that. I don't dig enough into it myself because I got to focus on the NFL.
Right. Well, that's I mean that's kind of like what led me down the path to Debbie was It's just constantly needing to find the edge,
Right.
the competitive edge that puts you ahead. And so if I'm like paying attention to Devy, then that's going to give me an edge in my rookie drafts. If I'm paying attention in Devy, or if I'm paying attention to like the freshman class and the 5 and 4 star recruits, that's going to give me an edge in Devy. So it all leads down the same degenerate path, and and that's what we're doing here. Because if you've watched this portion of the show, if you've watched the entire show, you are a degen. I could make a, I could do a comedy tour based on if you know you're a degen. Um, I'm
Exactly. We
happy.
kept the Foxworthy.
I'm proud to say that on my main Devy team, I do have Luke Lachey and Aronde Gadsden Jr.
Let's
and Amari
go.
Neblack. So those are my three tight ends, and I'm looking forward to this season, especially getting my injured guys back because they were supposed to carry me the last season and then get into the NFL this year, and they both got hurt. That was depressing. And then when you like looking on the waiver wire for a tight end in Devy, that's how I found out about Dallin Holker because he was,
Right.
you know,
The
just
numbers.
stacking Devy stats,
Hmm.
which is that's the edge, baby. All right, Andrew Cooper from the Fantasy Alarm at Koopa Fiasco on Twitter. I appreciate your 140 minutes, 143 minutes that you've given to me today. Um, again, I've been a fan for a long time. I'm honored to have had you on here. I hope to work with you again in the future. For those of you who are watching, this is again the third part of the show, which is a 4-part series of positional experts where I'm doing get to know the content creator, some dynasty stuff leading up to the rookie drafts, and some Devy stuff for the undroppables, the fantasy burn, and the dynasty pulse. The entire show will be put on the fantasy burn, so go to that and watch the entire thing. If you want to watch the dynasty pulse section, go to Fantasy Football Plus over on YouTube and find our dynasty pulse show. And you're already here at the undroppables, so go to those other two things. Follow me at Big Boned FFB on Twitter. You can find everything else I do, including my fantasy football advice network show with my partner Mike Greber, who we do a redraft thing for your Yahoo leagues, your ESPN leagues, work leagues, family leagues, things like that. And tomorrow night, Friday, the 12th of April, I am debuting my Friday night player profiler news show, or player profiler today Friday segment. So be sure to go to player profiler news and check that out, and like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, share, all that stuff across all the algorithms. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming in. I feel like I'm more of an expert on tight ends now, even though if I was in a tight end only league with you, you'd still wax me. And and I appreciate
Never
your
know.
time today.
Well, cheers, brother. It's the best I can do to share the information, and appreciate you guys for having me on. And I gotta say, I love the Undroppables Network, man. A lot of good folks over there. So just keep up the good work, brother. Appreciate
The
it.
best. And thank you, Andrew. And everybody, I hope you win.